everybody. Professor Jones here. Welcome to the FBO Fashion Source Studio here on Woodward Heights in Ferndale, Michigan. Today I'm going to be showing you how to draft a simple strapless top foundation. I'm actually going to be doing pattern making today. So we talked about the difference between pattern making and pattern drafting. So far we have drafted the front and back bodice, the sleeve, and the front and back skirt. So we have drafted the basic foundation pieces, okay? So now we're going to start to make patterns from our drafted pattern. So we drafted the 5-piece foundation set for a size 8. So that means that we're going to use our foundation pieces to draft or to make other patterns from. And all the patterns that we make from this size 8 foundation set will be in a size 8. So they will fit the size 8 model we took the measurements for, okay? So just make sure that you gather your tools, you have everything you need in your table is set, your measurements are set, everything. Every time you get ready to draft, make sure your workspace is ready to receive your work, okay? So let's get started. So we have my little sketch of a basic strapless top, and that's what we're going to be making today. So focus on the word making today, because we're going to take our drafted foundation pieces for the size 8 and we're going to make our strapless top pattern from these pieces, okay? All right, so I'm going to start off with the front. And I'm going to use my size 8 front pattern, but before I do, I'm going to be using some of the principles of pattern making to prepare my draft. So I've got my fan on. Okay, so here's my size 8 pattern for the front that I have drafted. If you notice, it has a waist dart and it has the bust dart, as it should, but I want to use a 1 dart pattern to draft my strapless top, because it would be easier to do that. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is not destroy my master pattern, but to make a copy of it first. And before I do that, I'm going to alter it a little bit. So when you have your basic pattern set, I always have a single dart front, and I have the sloper that has both of the darts, okay? This one has both of the darts, and I'm just using it for an example. So I'm just going to slash open my waist dart here, and I'm going to add my bust dart intake to it so that I only have 1 dart when I trace it onto my paper. So I'm now not drafting patterns, I'm making patterns, okay? I'm going to make a pattern from my sloper, okay? So I'm slashing 2 but not through. And let me get my tape ready here, and this is the tape that you don't have to worry about destroying your paper with. It's removable tape. And in pattern making, it's one of those things you're going to want to keep around. You will be using a lot anytime you're doing any dart manipulation or just in general pattern making. You may need your tape, so I'm going to cut me a few pieces and put it over here to the side just in case. Okay. All right. So ready again. So I've slashed open to the bust point. Okay, and I've slashed open to the bust point here. So here's my dart. This is my bust dart. I'm going to close this dart, and when I close it, you'll notice that when I take this and move it closed, the bottom, more of it goes down here to the top, to the bottom. So when I match that, close that there, I've got a bigger dart here. Okay. So I'm going to tape that because it's temporary here, and we already know we're going to use this, and we're going to use this again. Okay. Hold that closed. Okay. So now this dart is bigger. The amount that the bust dart is added to my waist dart. Okay. All right. So now, anytime you get ready to do trace a pattern or make patterns, you always want to make sure that you give yourself a guideline and a straight line so to lay your pattern against. So I'm going to put my line here. Okay. That is my center front line. Okay, and now I'm going to take my pattern and put it against that line. That way I can make sure that the front stays nice and straight. Okay, and I'm going to trace the pattern here because again, we don't want to destroy this master. We just want to make a copy of it so we can make a working pattern. Okay, so I'm going to trace the pattern just like it is. Okay. And I should use a ruler while I'm doing this, but let's see if I can, how good I can get it in here. Okay. All right. And then here's my other leg here. This is part of the dart. I'll go over to the side here. Don't worry if it's not perfect because we're going to go back and we're going to true all of our lines, so we'll be fine. Okay. Now when you do the armhole, you're going to want to make sure that you mark the notch there. Okay. Again, I know I'm going to go back and true all of my lines, so that's all I need to do. All right. So now I can take these up and I can put my pattern aside because I don't need that anymore now that I have this. Now I can go ahead and true my lines up. So the lines that should be straight, I can really make them nice and straight. Okay. All right. And I can finish my dart. Finish putting my dart in here. Okay. And then I can also go ahead and make sure that I have my armhole in here. There, nice and. Now I put make sure I really don't lose that. And then I'm going to get my shoulder up here. I want my pattern. So really I'm just, making myself a working pattern. Basically a pattern that I won't mind destroying, so to speak, because I am going to use this working pattern to make the changes to it I need so that I can make it look like what we want it to look like. Okay. All right, so now I've got my single dart bodice front. Okay. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is going to mark my bust radius. Okay, so since we're trying to make this design here, make sure you guys can see it. We have to first plot. So we have our pattern here. We want to make this pattern look like this pattern, one half of this pattern. So the first thing we can see is that this, because it has the seam going here, okay, and this is 1/4 of that pattern, that this is 1/4, that because this seam is here, we're going to end up having a center front and we're going to have a side front. So this one pattern piece is now going to become 2 pattern pieces. Okay, and remember, we never get rid of our darts. We can move our darts around. We can make them into pleats. We can make ruffles. We can combine them, divide them, whatever we want to do. But we never can get rid of these darts because we need them to make the pattern fit in all of the necessary places. Okay. All right. So now I've got all of my dart intake here, so I'm going to mark where my bust point would be, right? And then from there I'm going to come down 2 inches, okay, on my dart leg. Okay, so if I do that, I would come to here. Okay, 2 inches on my dart leg. All right, and then I'm going to mark 2 inches around the whole pattern here. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to mark the radius of my bust. So that area of that we talk about, that where the fullest part of the bust is, and we don't want to have a sharp point there, so that we have to go around and make sure we mark those points. Okay, and whenever I'm doing pattern making, I always like to go ahead and mark that first so that I can have my area marked out that I know I can't go into with my darts. Okay. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is find the midpoint of my shoulder here. So once you've taken a pattern making class, you'll learn that there are 9 places on this front bodice that you can move the dart intake to, okay, for design purposes. So 9 places, not counting the waist dart. Today we move the bust dart into the waist dart, okay, but there are 9 places, 9 other places around this front pattern piece that we can move that dart for design purposes. We're not going to change what it is, change the size of it. We're just going to move that intake around. All right. Okay, so I'm going to mark one of the places, which would be the shoulder. I want to find the halfway point. So, and mark it. This is one of the 9 places, and this is mid shoulder. Okay, mid shoulder. So I'm going to mark that, and then I'm going to square a line straight down to the bust point. So I am plotting my design, okay? So I've got that to the bust point. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and mark 2 inches out here on this line so I can really see it away from that bust point. All right, now I can really see it. And now I'm ready to contour my my dart legs. Okay, so whenever a pattern does not have any top on it, so no sleeves or anything, in order for it to fit, to stay up on the body, you're going to have to contour it. That's the third principle of pattern making, contouring. And that just involves doing a little bit more with the pattern than you would if you just left it like it is right now and sewed the darts up. So you go a step further than just sewing up your darts to make it fit. You want it to fit. You want to contour it in areas where the body curves, like underneath the bust, the underbust, above the bust, and even right in here, if you from our shoulder down to this point here, we dip in a little bit sometimes. And so when you're doing a strapless top, you're going to be focused on making sure that you have the pattern that the pattern is contoured so that it fits those areas, which will help the top to stay up. Okay, so now I've got my I've got that marked here, and I've got my 2 inches down here. Okay, so then next I'm going to go here to my side seam here, and if you look at this, see how that comes in a little bit, and this is down a little bit. So it's not just freehanding. When you do pattern making, everything should be deliberate. You should know how far you went in, how far you marked down, what you did to this pattern in order to change it. Here I'm going to go in about a 1/4 of an inch. Okay, and when I go in a 1/4 of an inch there, I'm going to blend that into the side seam. Okay, so I'm bringing this side seam in a little bit because I want this to really cling to the body, because again, we won't have this part up here. Okay, now I'm going to decide where I want this to be. So this is my bust point, and it can't be down that low, so about right here when I'm doing my design is where I would want to have my design be. So once I locate that place, I'm just going to come here and I'm going to just see if I can line it up. Looks good to me. Okay, except I might want to go down here, so I'm going to go down a 1/4 of an inch a little bit because I don't want this underneath the arm there. So I'll go down a 1/4 of an inch here too, just a little bit more contouring, a little bit more of changing this pattern into what I want it to be. So I'm going to come down a 1/4 of an inch here. Okay, and that's going to be the point where I have my design line come to. So remember when I put the dart down here? So now I'm going to take that dart intake. Okay, not all of it, but I'm going to take it back. Okay, so I'm going to take 1 inch. So the way I'm going to do it is to take this is 1 inch, so I'm going to mark a 1/4 of an inch. Okay, a 1/4 of that inch on this side of this line. Okay, my design line, and then the rest of it, okay, if that's a 1/4, then the rest of that would be to 1 inch would be right here, which would be 1, 2, and 3/4. And that would be 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then 4. All right, and then I'm going to connect that point to my bust point. Okay, so what I did is just moved. I knew how much dart intake I had here because I combined it, and I knew I had a 1 inch bust dart, and I added it here. So now I just took 1 inch away from here, and moved it up here. Okay. All right. So now I'm on my way to designing. I'm in business. So now the 1/4 inch I marked down here, and then the top of my dart here, I'm going to connect those two together. So I'm shaping up my side seam, my side pattern piece. Okay, and then I'm going to take the other part of the dart and I'm going to just draw it straight out to the front, because you know our design is coming across here straight, just about. I put a little dip in there, but it's going to be straight. If you want a little dip in there, you can make one there, but I want to show you how to do the basic foundation piece, and you can change it once you get comfortable with drafting it. So now, there you go. So if I wanted to put a curve here, I could come down a little bit with this and just draw it down to this point. All right. Okay. So now that I've got my design lines on here. So this part of the pattern is no good anymore. I'm done with it. That's no good. This part is the part I'm interested in. This is my, remember I told you we'd end up having 2 pattern pieces. So then this would be my center front and this would be my side front. Okay. So before I do anything else, I'm going to do a little contouring here. I don't want this to be a straight line. I want it to fit and really contour, really come into the body. So I'm going to find the point, that halfway point here, fold my tape in half here. Okay. Mark it there, and I'm going to come in just maybe 1/4 inch here. Okay, come in just 1/4 inch, and when I come in that 1/4 inch, I'm going to just connect the legs like this. All right, see what I did there? And now I can take this curved ruler and make it real nice. Okay, just move my curved ruler around until I get to the point where I can make it nice like I want it to be. So what I'm trying to do is make a nice curved shape down here to the side. All right. Okay. Now I'm going to come here and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to come in about 1/4 inch. Well, actually I'm coming out. I want this to come out a little bit. So I'm going to come here. Let me see, I've got about 1 inch down here. Make sure, don't skip any parts of it, so make sure you measure this and find the halfway point on here. I don't want to leave that part out. Okay, make sure you're at the right point. Alright, so we're pretty close, so we got the halfway point here. Once you have the halfway point here on this pattern, I want to come out a little bit. So I'm going to come out about 1/8 inch here. I'm shaping this. Okay, just like that. Okay. Now you'll notice when you're doing pattern making, I'll always say know what you did. Okay, and don't just make a mark and know what you did. Know how much you did it. Okay, so you want to be sure you do that. So another thing I'd like to do is the same thing over here. Come out a little bit here, about 1/8 inch, and I want to make this the same way. I want to make sure I contour this so that it comes here and we have a nice smooth fit. Okay. So I'm going to use my curved ruler to do that. Sorry if you guys heard that. There's a train that runs right behind the studio here. I adopted it. I figured I might as well. It's not going anywhere. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to come here and I'm going to continue with my contouring. Remember, this down here is underneath the bust. This is at the top of the bust, and this is the bust line. This is under the bust. So this is that area that you want to make sure that you have the nice curve in. So you need this to really fit. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to contour a little bit. So I'm going to come out this way about 1/4 inch here, and on the other side about 1/4 of an inch too, same thing. Okay, and then I'm going to do a little contouring. So basically I'm going to come here, not changing that part there, come out and come back in. Okay, so I just I'm making a little shape there, and I can use my ruler a little bit. Just use it so I can come right in there, out there, nice, and then I can come back out here, slight curve, not a big curve. Okay, just doing a little shaping there. Okay, same thing here. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to make sure that I come out just a smidgen. Okay, and then come right back in. Okay, all right. You guys probably noticed that I draw, so I'm really comfortable with freehanding. I don't really depend a lot on tools except for the ones to make the straight lines, but these tools to help you draw a nice curve on your patterns, don't be afraid to use them. Just make sure you try to be free with them. You know, don't be incredibly dependent, but use them to for preciseness, but don't there is no, you can do a lot of freehand if you're comfortable with it. Okay, all right, so side front, center front, side front, ready to do some cutting, guys. All right, so now again, there's lots of different ways you can do this. I'm showing you the basics first. If you go on to our class site, you'll see that we get into, as you get more comfortable, as the class advances, then we make sure we go ahead and we learn to do the more detailed drafts and pattern making. Okay, but I think it's important for you to know how to get started, and that you make sure you know the rules of the game before you start to play, meaning that you don't just do something, you know why you did it. Okay, all right, so now here's basically what I have that's important to me. That other paper that now is no longer part of my pattern, so I'm going to cut my pattern apart. And one thing that I think is important to do, so this is my bust point here, and usually what I like to do is make sure that I have a notch at certain points on these two patterns to help line them up. And I think a good place to put those notches right there, of course, and then also it's good to put one at the halfway point on the darts. Okay, so it will just help match these two pieces together, because we've changed these two pieces and we want to make sure that we marry them together easily. Okay, that's my side front. Now I'm going to cut out the other one. And again, it looks funny the way we contoured the darts, but when we put these two, cut them out of the fabric and put them together, you'll understand more of why we did what we did with these. So now, here we are. All right. So if we take a look at our two pieces here, center front, side front, this is going to be cut on the fold. Okay. So we'll cut two on the fold and cut two. All right, because you know our pattern does not have a seam going up the front. Okay, so if we had these two pieces, we would be trying to stitch them together just kind of like this, and we'd be still using our darts, but we're not but we're just using them in a different way. So now I'm going to just put in my notches. Okay. Okay, and just like every other pattern we do, you want to make sure you label the pattern and that you put your grain line on here, and you put how many, what size, how many to cut. This is the side front. We want to cut 2. No SA added. We did not add any seam allowance to it, and this is a size 8. Okay, so same thing here. This is the center front, and we want to cut 1 on the fold, or 2 on the fold. It's 2, but we're cutting on the fold. Okay, no SA, size 8. Now this is now a pattern by itself. When I do the back to it and any other pattern pieces that I end up drafting, making to go with this, we're going to give them a style number so that we can put them together, and if things get mixed up or whatever, we'll know what pattern pieces go together. So I have to give this pattern a number, so I'm going to give this pattern piece the number 201, and then this will be 201, and when I draft the back, it will be 201. Okay, all right, so again, this is just basic. It is not it's not as contoured as it could be, but it's a good basic pattern for you to use to make your first strapless pattern. Okay, all right, there's my grain line there, my other grain line here, and I hope you guys will try these patterns, and that you'll get really good at making patterns. Okay. All right, so next we're going to be drafting the back pattern, and it's pretty simple. You might have guessed it. We don't have any curves in the back, so we've got it made, right? All right, see you in a minute.